Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. I'm jumping in with this intro before the official intro because when I started this project, I thought that I was going to be making a lion stuffed animal, and then things changed and it ended up being a lion quilt block. So when you hear me talking about the lion stuffed animal, you can be assured that it is actually going to be a lion quilt block. So enjoy! Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. I bought this book the other day. It's this used book called Patchwork for Beginners. And in this book, I saw a picture of this really funky lion stuffed animal. So I want to try and make it. I have no use for a lion stuffed animal, but I saw it and I think it's cool and I want to try it. So let me show it to you. Here's the book that I found the picture of the lion stuffed animal, Patchwork for Beginners by Sylvia Green. And this is a pretty old book. Let's see. The copyright on this is 1971. So this was a time where there was actually very few quilt books being published at all. Quilt books didn't really start to become popular until the late 1970s, after the bicentennial. Here is the lion. Isn't that awesome? And so the fringe around his face is just some trim that they used to make the mane. So cool. So I got some trim. Here it is. I got this on Amazon. If you search trim, gold colored trim, you'll get a bunch of options. What I've also done here is cut a bunch of 2.5 inch strips. Some, I cut these out of my scraps. So some are bigger and some are smaller, but they're all 2.5 inches in kind of these colors that I think make sense for a lion. So what I'm going to do is, I've paired these up. I'm going to sew these right sides together using a 1/4 inch seam right down the side, and then I will iron them. I have my strips sewn here into doubles, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do next. But first, I wanted to mention that this book does not include any instructions. So there's that picture of the lion, that awesome lion, but the description down here only mentions who made it and a little bit about it, but it doesn't say, how to make it or anything like that. This is the only text that goes with this image. So I'm gonna kind of make it up as I go along. I don't actually know how big these squares are, but our squares are going to finish at 2 inches. We cut our 2.5 inch strips. And let's see what we are going to do here. I'm going to take a strip and take my ruler and take one of these horizontal lines and match it up against my seam and trim off my edge. This will create a 90-degree angle here. I'm going to spin it around and 1, 2.5, go over 2.5 inches and cut. So now I have this unit here. I'm going to do this with same with the other fabrics, and I'll probably cut, to start, I'll cut 1 or 2 of each of these, just because the lion's not that big. I don't need that many squares, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And once I've cut some of these units, we'll take a look at what to do next. Here are my pieces all laid out. This is the head up here. It's just a 4 patch, so I'll put these right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch seam. Then the body part, not including the legs, these are the legs here. So the body part is 5 by 3. And so since 5 is not a multiple of 2, I kind of had to do some configuration here, as you can see. So I'll sew these 2 together. So this will be a strip. These 2 together to be a strip. Same here. And then I'll sew this to here, right? And I'll sew these 3 lines together and then attach this unit to this unit. And we'll worry about the legs in a second. Now I have the head as 1 unit, the body as a unit, and then each of the legs. What I'm going to do is put right sides together along the neck, we shall say. So 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then iron that flat. Same with the legs. 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the other leg as well along that seam. Then I'll have 1 big unit, and I'll be on my way to making my lion stuffed animal. I've done a couple things here. First of all, this whole piece is one unit. And then I went ahead and cut out this 2-inch strip. I had to sew 2 strips together so it would be long enough. I cut it to be 2 inches wide and then long enough to go all the way around my lion. Here's the picture, and what I'm noticing is, so this is kind of the strip that I cut around. You can see it's 3-dimensional, so that will be the 2-inch strip, but I have to consider the tail. I didn't actually think about that till just now, but I'll think about that in a minute. For now, let's focus on the face. So it looks like the face is a combination of fabric, just cut out fabric, and then maybe some embroidery. So I'm gonna cut some pieces out for the face. I may not do the embroidery. I may just cut pieces to look like a lion. I don't have a pattern or anything, so I'm just gonna be eyeing it and doing the best that I can. Maybe I'll embroider the whiskers. I think that would be pretty easy to do. I'm not very experienced with embroidery, so I don't like to do anything too challenging, but I think the straight lines would be fine. I've added my lion face here. I think it's super cute. It's, you know, kind of folk arty. It's not perfect, but I kind of like the imperfection. It's looking a little strange right now, but I think once I put this mane, once I sew the mane on, it will look a lot more lion-like. So next what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take my strip and I'm gonna pin it right sides together along, starting at the back of the lion and pinning all the way around. And then I'm gonna sew all the way around, but I'll have enough for a tail coming off the back end. All right, we're having a massive change of plans here because I'm having issues that I can't get around. I don't usually like to bail on a project, and this I'm going to, instead of bail, shift direction. So part of the problem is I just can't figure out how these mitered corners go in the opposite directions. It's just, I just can't figure it out. I've spent a very long time on this already. So I'm gonna take this this 2-inch strip off so that it's just my lion. And I'm actually going to make this a quilt block instead, which I think could be really cool. I think if you had this, especially with the mane, the 3-dimensional mane could be really awesome. And if you made multiple lion quilt blocks and then had every other block be pieced and then every other block be lion, that could be really special. So I'm going to take this off and then let's piece together a quilt block instead. We are back to square one here. I have obviously taken off that strip, but I also took off the head and the feet so that I could add on the background. So I cut this strip to be 6.5 by 4.5, and this is a 2.5-inch square. So what I'm gonna do is sew right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, press, do the same on this side, right sides together, and press. So this will be one long strip. I'll attach this strip to the body, and then I'll do obviously right sides together, 1/4 inch, press, and attach this unit to the body. And this will be one big piece, and then I'll add a little border of this checkerboard here, this gray checkerboard, which is also a flannel, along the whole thing. I don't know if I mentioned that I'm using flannels in this piece. It might have been obvious, but initially when I was thinking it was going to be a stuffed animal, I thought that would be nice and soft, but now it will just be a nice soft quilt block. My lion now has its background. I've cut some strips to go on the top and bottom. I haven't forgotten about the mane. I will attach that after I attach my 2 strips to the top and bottom, and then these are 2 inches wide. I'm going to attach those, and then I'm going to see how wide I need the side strips to be, because I would like this to be a square. So I'll attach the top, bottom, sides, and then I'll add my mane. I am thinking about maybe, and I'm still thinking about the tail. I haven't ruled out doing a tail yet. I'm also thinking about maybe doing some fringe down at the feet, because I'm worried a little bit about there not being enough contrast between my lion and the background. And I think adding a little bit of the fringe might help. I'm noticing though that with seam allowance, I probably should have cut, the strips a little bit wider, but I'm just gonna go with it. We're just gonna keep it moving. I've cut my side strips here to be 3 inches wide, which is wider than I think I need, but I'm going to sew everything together and then I can trim it down. I've also cut this 2-inch strip for the tail, and what I'm going to do is kind of iron it in like this, and then, fold it in like this, iron it, and then fold it again. I can stitch along this line, and then before I sew this side on, I will sew the tail on. I've added the fringe to the end here, and actually once you do this, you can cut these pieces and they should, oops, this one came off. So I guess you just have to be careful. And then you can kind of fringe it up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to put this facing in along this seam. I'll sew these right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, open it up and press, and then same with this side. The tail is attached, and I would recommend making your strip on the bias. I did not, and so mine is kind of like straight, but I think what I'm going to do is kind of wrap it down and kind of sew it a little bit more like this. Now, it's kind of sewn on the diagonal down. If I had sewn it up, you could kind of go up and down, which would be kind of cool, but that's how I'll do that. And if it's not pinned fully all the way down, that's okay. Then I have my mane that I'm going to attach next. I'm probably going to start at the bottom here and just sew all the way around. And then I'll do the same. I'm going to do the same at the feet. Here's the finished lion. I am obsessed. I think this is really better than I could have possibly imagined. Two things I want to make sure to mention. Number one is that this is not a block that is appropriate for a child under 3. So as you saw when I made the tail, these pieces come off very, very easily. And so I did secure it down more thoroughly on the mane and the feet than I did on the tail. You still wouldn't want this to be for a baby. The other thing that I may have said, but I think I didn't, was that when I showed the picture of the lion, here's the original one that was the stuffed animal, I don't think I said the maker. So the maker is somebody named Jean McLeod. Now, I'm not sure if she came up with this pattern or whether she just made it off of a pattern. You know, this is, like I mentioned, this was a really long time ago, but I wanted to give her credit for that. The other thing I'm noticing about the lion that's really fun is her checkerboard. Every other one is this floral, and then every other checkerboard is just plain. So that's kind of a fun thing, something to think about. So thank you for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.